Welcome, you guys, to the S3 podcast. It's your host, Savannah Justine. I have a guest here with me today. This man has spent most of his career standing behind a bar. Along the way, he has earned his master's degree in education with a certification in teaching English. Not only did he find that he loved English and loved teaching, but he found out he was better suited to teach and tell stories and talking to people. I'm sorry. And he finally accepted his fate. Now he has blended his education with his experience and has written a wonderful book called A Shot of Oakies. It's the first book in a 3-book chronicle about old Rosie Chronicles. Today, you ladies and gentlemen, I have Alex Bennett with me.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, and it's an honor.
No problem. I am really excited to talk to you. I absolutely loved the book. The book is about a woman who goes through different parts of the Caribbean, different parts of the sea, and she's actually a pirate. And it's so many interesting stories that tie into alcohol, and it ties into what a shot of Oakies actually is. So, Alex Bennett, I wanted to ask, what is your story?
So I started working in restaurants when I was 16 years old. My parents had bought a place, and I started washing dishes in the kitchen the night we took it over. And then from there, learned how to serve, learned how to bartend, managed it. The long story short with that place is that my parents sold it to my in-laws. They became my former in-laws. And then I started a whole new journey in life.
Wow.
And that's when I went back and I got certified to teach, got my master's in English. And I had a very hard time finding a teaching position. That was 2010, and there just wasn't anything available. So I just kind of accepted my fate and settled in behind the bar, and I've been full-time bartending ever since. And actually, it's worked out for the best. I've met a lot of interesting people. I enjoy bartending. It's a lot of my friends, and, it's a social aspect of my life.
Okay.
So, and that led me to then, I know how to teach people how to write. And I always liked writing, so it became, I'm going to teach myself how to do this. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to conquer it. And so that's kind of how I got where I am today.
That is what's up. Now, you made us a drink today, and I did ask you to make us a drink, something special. So can you tell me what it is?
So I call it the Pirates Bay.
Pirates Bay.
Pirates Bay. So it's a shot and a half of Blue Carousel. A shot of Captain Morgan, a shot of Malibu rum, some pineapple juice, some orange juice, and then a little bit of Sprite on the top. Should taste very tropical-y.
I was going to say it tastes very tropically. Something about the tropics in the book, too.
Yeah, well, the Caribbean is my home.
The Caribbean is my home. Now, I want to tell you something. I absolutely love books, but I lost my love for books when books stopped becoming so fun. They weren't enjoyable. They were just very much how to do this, how to make money, where to go when you're in college, and how to elevate yourself and do this. And I'm speaking more specifically about adult books. I couldn't find an adult book that really gave me imagination to really see what the book really was for it to be. And I went to a bar called P.F. Chang's, actually a restaurant, and I was so hungry. And I stopped by and I was like, you know what? This girl on TikTok, she was posting about P.F. Chang's and their lunch special.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. Only $17, only $20. Actually, it's a really good special.
Yeah, it's a good deal.
It's a good deal.
Yep.
Shout out to P.F. Chang's. But I went there and I sat down at the bar and I was waiting for the bartender. And a guy, what was his name again?
His name's Larry.
Larry.
Yeah.
Shout out to Larry. He was sitting there and he was like, oh, the bartender's going to be right back. He was just going to do something. I was like, okay, cool. And this guy walks up and he's like, how are you doing? I'm going to be your bartender, Alex. And I said, okay, can you get me an espresso martini? And you actually made the best espresso martini I've had in a very long time.
I just made a lot of them, that's all.
It wasn't too creamy.
Yeah.
It was perfect. Can you actually tell them how you made the espresso martini?
So my recipe for espresso martini is I'm going to use 2 ounces of vanilla vodka.
Okay.
And I'm going to use an ounce of Kahlua or any coffee liqueur, an ounce of dark chocolate liqueur, and then a couple good shots of espresso coffee.
Okay.
And, I shake it up, and then strain it out, and it should have a nice, kind of coffee espresso froth on the top.
It was perfect.
Oh, good. And
It
then
was
a
perfect.
few coffee beans, and That's my espresso martini.
Okay. Okay. Well, enough about the espresso martini, but it was so good. He gave me the espresso martini and I sipped it and he was talking to Larry about his book. And I heard like a gist. He was like, "Oh, I'm finishing writing it up." And I was like, "Oh, well, what book are you reading?" He's like, "Actually, I write a book."
Yeah.
And this book is fabulous. Oh my gosh, it's so good. He ties in history about liquor and pirates and all these different types of things. And it actually, I really want to say, the first chapter in the book was very vivid in detail.
Okay.
And it was very fulfilling with like figuring the imagery.
Oh,
The
thank
imagery
you.
was
Appreciate
perfect.
that.
The dark bar and the candle lit area
Okay.
and the guy with the beard. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
well.
could imagine him. I could imagine him perfectly. But can you tell me the story of how you picked it being a pirate book and not a bartending book since you're so into bartending?
Well, it kind of goes like this. You know, you get inspired to write a book, and you know, there was a girl, and she was a good friend of mine, and we used to work together. And she actually broke a piece of glass and got one stuck in her eye. It was a real mess. She couldn't drive. She had to wear an eye patch, and so I used to kind of tease her. You know, you look like a pirate and stuff like that. Well, she very much encouraged me to write. I had written some other short stories and stuff. She had read them, and she was very, very forceful about telling me, you need to write, you got a gift, you got a gift. And so, you know, she was a whiskey drinker, and I kind of learned the history of whiskey. And the history of whiskey or bourbon kind of goes like this.
Please tell me, what's the history of whiskey?
So whiskey's grain alcohol, and barley's a native grain to Britain. And so 1,000 years ago, the Scots and the Irish started making whiskey out of barley.
And the Irish, Rosie is Irish.
Well, the pirate is Irish. Clarkson is Irish, and then Mary is she's Scottish.
Scottish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Because there's a blend in that. Yeah. So, well, what happened was when the Scots and the Irish during the Age of Exploration, everywhere they went, they'd find a native grain and they'd start making whiskey out of it. Okay. So you get to America, corn's native to America. They start making whiskey out of corn, and that was the first step in making bourbon. The second step came about like this. At the time, everything was shipped in wooden barrels, but that was only so one man could roll it. It had nothing to do with the aging process because they didn't age it because you couldn't trust water. So if you had a little bit of alcohol to it, it's going to kill anything in there that might kill you first and make it safe to drink.
Really?
Yep. That was their way of purifying water back in those days.
So whiskey purified water.
Water.
Bourbon purified water.
Yep.
Okay.
Rum, all that sort of stuff, you know. And I can go even further on this, but in the end, what happened was if you were making a batch of whiskey back then and you had a barrel made out of pine, you'd just fill that up and send it on its way. And you can imagine how that pine might affect the taste, but they just kind of dealt with it because it really wasn't going to be in there that long anyway. But then they get to America and they start making barrels out of white American oak, and then they'd fill those up and they'd send them on their way, and they'd get to where they were going, and everybody's like, "Wow, man, this is great. Whatever you're doing, keep it up."
Wow.
So they associated the two, and that was the second step in making bourbon. And then the third one came about when you had your white American oak barrel, but it was filled with pickles or herring or crabs or something to that effect.
Okay.
You can imagine how that might affect the taste. So they started charring out the inside to get rid of those lingering flavors and odors. And all of a sudden they realized, wow, man, this is something, you know, and we're onto something here. And so that's kind of how bourbon was born. Now, it's a very murky history. They say it's 1785, but essentially it's 1785. What happened was everybody was able to basically pay a tax to get a license to sell their whiskey as bourbon. And it kind of was like this. You came up with the corn, I came up with the barrel, somebody else came up with charring it out. We kind of compared notes through the years. So as a result, I could play with it. And I kind of knew that history, being a bartender and being in bars for so long. So, you know, I get this idea in my head of this Irish pirate who steals ships for alcohol, and then it kind of, I can tie in this murky history of whiskey, and then the backdrop to it is the last true Scottish rebellion against the English rule, and that was a small part of a much larger war, but I kind of knew that rebellion from reading and seeing some documentaries about it and stuff like that. And so, you know, when you write a book, I try to tell people it's like the inspiration comes from here, it comes from there. It's like doing a puzzle, but you don't have the pieces and you don't have the picture, but something just hits you and you go, ooh, I can make that work. And you just kind of tie it all together.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how it came out, you know. It's
I love that.
yeah.
That's really what inspired the book, right?
That's really what inspired the
Wow.
book, you know. And then it's just a matter of sitting down and getting at it.
Okay. I like the story that you told me about the whiskey and the bourbon. And so that's really why now today companies I saw a Jack Daniels actually documentary where it was a like warehouse filled with
Yep.
white oak barrels.
Yep.
And that's really the story. That's why they picked the white oak instead of the pine,
Well, yeah, absolutely.
because it didn't alter the taste. It actually made it much better.
Makes it better, yes.
That's
You know,
crazy.
alcohol, so if you think of it as grain alcohol, that's
Mm-hmm.
going to take on any flavor that you add to it.
Mm.
So, you know, if you put it in a smoky barrel, it's going to get that caramel color, but it's also going to get a smoky, you know, flavor and punch to it.
Okay.
They actually char the barrels in a variety of ways. There'll be thicker char, there'll be a heavier char, and those different ways of doing that make a different whiskey. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, can you tell me? I do want to tell you, it's so much drinking in this book. They absolutely drink, 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 drink. So it made me think about pirates and sailors and things like that. So can you tell me how does the drunk as a sailor, does that have anything to do with some of the?
It absolutely does. So
Okay.
it kind of goes back to the purifying water thing. You know, back then, if you were on a ship, they would have barrels of fresh water. But within a couple days, they were going to go stagnant. So you could add a little bit of, now they used rum, the British especially used rum, and you could add some rum to your water and make it safe to drink.
Wow.
And that's kind of where a lot of they would call it grog. So they'd add rum and some lime juice and try to make it a little more palatable that way. You know. But in the end, a British sailor back in those days was rationed a pint of rum and a gallon of beer a day. They drank
A gallon of beer?
a gallon of beer a day. And
Wow.
it goes to you couldn't trust water, so they would make beer, and you would have a heavy stout in the morning. It was a liquid breakfast.
Liquid breakfast.
Yeah, and then, in the afternoon when they would be working, then they would have a lighter lager, so it wouldn't get them as drunk, but, it would quench their thirst. And yes, the idea, it was a very grueling job.
Yeah.
It was a 12-hour day. You were working the entire time. You were also dangerous job. And so keep them a little drunk, keep them a little happy. And that was kind of the way that they kept morale up as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So they drank incredibly much more alcohol than we do today.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's really where drunk as a sailor comes
That's
from.
really where drunk as a sailor comes from.
That's crazy. Oh my goodness. So they drink the rum to purify the water. They drink whiskey and bourbon as well.
Yeah.
Because it was better than drinking water, of course. But they loved the flavor.
Yeah.
And they loved what it was about. Can you tell me something about why you put so many stops in the book?
What do you mean by stop?
Like there were so many different journeys, so many different trips. I really enjoyed the trip of when you introduced Clarkson, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah.
And she was going overseas and she was trying to figure out what's the shot of Oakies? Like
So-
where did this come from? Like
Okay.
how did you have this?
Okay. So, to tell a story, to write a book, you're telling a story. And part of what you have to do as an author is conceptualize what's the best way to tell this story. And so I started out with the old sea captain coming into that bar. There's a hurricane going on in Jamaica. And back then, you didn't have TVs.
You didn't.
So how did they entertain each other?
Right.
Well, they told stories, they sung songs, stuff like that. So I thought to myself, well, the best way to tell this story, and again, it's fiction. I'm making this up. None of these
course.
characters are real.
Of course.
So I can't literally follow a historical timeline to tell the story. I got to make it up. Well, I'm going to have a storyteller make it up and tell the story. So it starts in 1785. And then, as each chapter goes, he tells a part of the story. So, it starts with Clarkson taking the ship and the pirate taking the ship for the shot of for the barrel of Oakies, which is what is her
Purpose.
whiskey. Yeah, that's what she calls the whiskey. And then it goes to the next story, or the next chapter, starts back again with the captain, or with the old sea captain telling the tale. And it goes to Mary, who's kind of the purveyor of Oakies, who's selling it around the Caribbean.
Tell me about Mary.
So Mary would be like the Scottish salesman, I guess you could say. Now there's a distillery, but everybody kind of associates the whiskey with her. And being in the alcohol bar business, I have found that beautiful women tend to sell more alcohol. It's just the way it works.
Yes.
So that was kind of the idea behind her, is to have her, and this did historically happen. We think back in the day that women didn't play roles in a lot of these aspects of life, but women were ship captains, women were pirates, women owned bars, and there's a lot to that. I can explain that if you'd like, but in the end, I looked at it as, I'll have this person be the person that sells the whiskey, because then it would get word out about the whiskey faster among sailors, because what are sailors going to talk about?
Whiskey.
And women. So that's kind of the idea behind her. But to tell this story, and then it goes across seas to where there's, the English ship captain who's fighting the war, and he's a pirate hunter, and you got to kind of, okay, how does he hear about it? And how does he end up in the Caribbean? And you kind of tie and weave all these things together. So that's part of the reason why the book bounces around a lot. And with the idea of, if you think of a funnel, in the first book it's wide, and everything's going in there. But by the third book, it gets down to the bottom of the funnel, and everything is kind of coming together.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I do love the fact that it's in the Caribbean, and you spoke about all the different locations and the bar and the imagery about the tropical and the beaches. It's beautiful. But I also really want to say I loved the maps.
Oh, wow.
In the
Thank
book.
you very much.
I haven't seen too many maps in books in such a quite long time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you what really is the history of whiskey, bourbon, and rum. Is that what drove you to talk about the Caribbean? Or what? What made you pick an island? Islands.
Okay, number one, I love the Caribbean.
Okay.
I've been down there. My parents had timeshare down there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In Cancun, going back to the 80s. So
that's crazy. My mom had a timeshare too.
Yeah.
I don't know where it was, but she loved it dearly.
Oh yeah. And
they don't do that anymore, do they?
No, you can still get timeshare. It's still available.
Timeshares?
It's not quite like it was. And the problem with like Cancun is it's so built up right now. It's almost like going down to America. But when I was
by the way, you guys, timeshares, I don't know if you guys know, but like you pay a certain amount of money and you go during like a certain point of the month or something, and it's like pretty much all inclusive, and you get everything you want, need, everything. So if it was in Cancun, they would pick a certain part of the week they would want to go. And then you would, once you go, everything is included: food, booze, transportation. If you want to go out somewhere, it might be included too. But it's a much better travel experience to me.
It's easier for sure.
Yeah.
You don't have to carry a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true.
You pay one bill at the end, and you don't have to leave the resort.
You don't. You really don't.
No, and then, and again, it's, to me, the white sandy beaches, the turquoise water. It's paradise.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why the Caribbean is such a part of it, And again, in writing the book, I had to do so much research because, if my pirate's going to have an island, well, there's real islands out there. I can't just make it up,
That's true.
So I had to find islands from around. Obviously, Jamaica was a hub for the British Empire, Kingston and Port Royal, but then you kind of branch out to all the other little islands around there, and we think today of travel between these islands is pretty quick, but back then those sailing ships, they weren't that fast, and so you could hide out.
It was just a sheet.
Yeah, and it went with the wind blowing.
Yeah.
Like there was no wind. You ain't
Wherever
going
you
nowhere.
went, that's
Exactly. So, I'd have to find an island that was close to Jamaica to make it my pirate island. And then, there's another island where and again, this comes with the research. Most of these are inhabited today, but I had to find them that were uninhabited back then, you know? And so that was kind of tricky.
Yeah, how much research did that take? It's you guys, this book is filled with imagery. It's filled with really good details, really good names of swords, really good names of ships, pirates, clans, locations. Like, this book it's filled to the T, and I love it because it really helps me.
Thank you very much.
It really helps me see the book for what it is. So, how much research did this take?
I would say to you that I did more research for this book than I did in my entire academic career. Without a doubt, probably 3 times the amount. And I say, thank God for Google, because I can just get on Google. I can do research. If I had to go to the library, I would have built a pillbox bunker around me of books that I wouldn't want anybody to touch, because, you know, and at times, you know, you're looking for one little detail. Yeah. And it would take me 4 hours, you know, like to try to describe Jamaica in 1785. Well, I found that, okay, there was like 500 brick buildings at that point. But are those white brick? Are those red brick? Are they big brick? Are they small brick? And so I would be looking and researching. Sometimes I'd research for 4 hours to write 2 paragraphs. You know, but I wanted to stay as historically accurate as possible.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because I did my research.
Oh,
I cross-checked. Okay, a lot of it is very true.
Okay.
And I loved
thank you.
it.
I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Now, I do want to talk about bartending and your bartending career.
Okay.
You said you've been bartending for how long?
Well, I've been in restaurants for 35 years. It's exclusively bartending for about the last 15 to 20.
Yeah, and what do you like most about bartending?
The people.
The people
that come in. Yeah, you know, it's funny. I made a lot of drinks in my life, you know, and if I never made another one, I'd be fine with that. You know, young bartenders love making drinks, and I get it. It's fun, and it's like, it's a challenge, and, you know, but I like to talk.
It's really a science experiment to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is, you know, and the one thing when I train a new bartender, I try to tell them, you know, if you have baking, it's like chemistry. You gotta, everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be right on. If you don't have the right amount of baking soda, the cookies are going to fall flat. But cooking's kind of like an art, where, you know, it's a dash of this, a taste of that, a little bit of this, a little bit more of that, and bartending falls in the middle. If you want to make a good drink, the alcohol has to be baking. It's got to be chemistry. You want the right amount of alcohol in the drink. But everything else, you got to get a feel for it. You know, the juices, it's like a heavy pour, or it's a good squeeze, or it's a swirl, or something like that. And you just kind of learn as you go that way, you know. And it's fun, and it is fun, and it's fun when somebody gives me a compliment. Don't get me wrong, but if you're going to ask me,
this drink is really good.
Yeah, it's good. If you ask me, I love the people. I've been blessed, especially working at Chang's. It's a very diverse clientele.
Yeah, it is.
I have friends, all ages, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all religions. And I learn more from them than I do reading or watching TV or anything else, because you get the personal experience, you know, and then, you know, you could end up on a podcast, you know,
because see how it worked out.
You never know, you know.
I mean, oh my gosh, y'all, I was so hungry. I found him. He made me the best espresso martini I've ever had, and now we're here. I'm so happy.
Yeah,
because the book is so good. Oh my goodness. You write a blog, really an Instagram. He runs an Instagram account and a Facebook account called Literary Booze.
That's correct.
Tell me about that, because when I followed it, it's a lot of good quotes from Voltaire, different Shakespearean artists, different people who really just have good quotes and good thoughts about life, philosophy, health, anything like that. So tell me how Literary Booze came to be.
So when I first started getting into the writing and publishing, you know, I self-published. And one of the things I read was that you need to have an online presence. And so I was thinking to myself, well, how do I get an online presence? And, you know, I am an English geek. I love authors. I read, and I love the symbolism and all that sort of stuff. So I thought to myself, well, you know, if I could feature an author every month, and I go by their birthday, and it doesn't matter to me. You know, I'll take any author that's been published, and then you do quotes and facts about their lives, and kind of put that out there, and I give my little own response to it all, and it's fun, you know, because I've done everybody from Gwendolyn Brooks to Tom Clancy and everything in between. My only requirements are that they have to be dead, you know, because I don't want to get any issues with anybody alive, and then, you know, I don't want anything political. I treat it like a bar, and then I have to be able to get their stuff in English. You know?
Okay.
Because that's the only language I speak.
Yeah.
You know? But other than that, you know, if there's an author that anybody would want to see featured, you shoot me and let me know, and I'll put them up there. And you know, I try to stay at least 6 months ahead on my authors, but you know, it would go off their birth months, and then I use it as a platform to kind of, you know, promote the book. Like when I have the second book coming out, I'll do a video and let everybody know the second book in the series is coming out. I'll use it to promote, you know, today, and let my fans know that I was on a podcast and try to send them your way as well.
Yes.
And you know, anything that is involved, sometimes I do dramatic readings, stuff like that too. So I kind of try to have fun with it. But it's mostly just about the authors. The longer I've gone, the more I appreciate those authors that have come before me, and the more I try to highlight them.
Okay. I love that. I absolutely love that. With bartending, what is one of your favorite, actually give me 3 favorite drinks that you like to make?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. So the 3 drinks that I get the most compliments on are going to be the basic drinks out there. Number 1, it's going to be my vodka martini, which a vodka martini is,
That's real popular right now. I don't know if you've seen on TikTok. It's called like a swamp martini or something.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. No,
Okay.
no.
It's a swamp martini. It's a real dirty martini with pickle juice, olive juice.
Yeah.
They'll put the pickle and the olive in the martini, and then they'll do pepper, and they'll do a drizzle of olive oil.
Yeah. Wow. Olive oil, too. All right. No. You know, drinks evolve. Number 1, I say they're like chili. There's a million different ways to make the same thing. But drinks evolve as tastes change and time goes on. And, you know, it's always interesting to hear something like that.
Would you drink that?
I don't know if I drink that
Yeah.
per se. I'm not a pickle juice kind of guy.
It's a lot. They do peppercini juice too sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
It sounds great. It's like a savory drink.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But, yeah.
The olive juice is going to make it salty. You know, pickle juice will add a little tang.
Yeah.
You know,
you definitely feel it.
Yeah. And then, you know, peppercini is going to add a little spice to it. So, yeah, you're kind of hitting all the tastes on that one.
Yeah.
You know?
But you said vodka martini.
Vodka martini.
What was the other 2?
So I get a lot of compliments on my old fashioned and my Manhattan, which are 2 of the most basic drinks. And the old fashioned, there's a story behind the old fashioned. If
Tell
you'd
me,
like to hear
what's the story behind the old fashioned?
So the old fashioned goes back to the late 1700s, where at the time, if you went to a bar, you were going to get the same thing. You could either get beer, wine, or a cocktail, and the cocktails were all the same. They were going to be 2 ounces of whatever alcohol they had. You get a sugar cube, you get a dash of bitters, they give you a splash of water, a little lemon or orange peel for some zest, and then they give you a big square ice cube, because that's the way ice came that day. And then the bartender would put that all in the drink, and you would take a little spoon and stir it, and in doing so, you dissolve the sugar, kind of mix all the ingredients, and make the cocktail. And that's just the way it was. And then around the 1815, 1820, you know, more mixers come out, more alcohols come out. And so as a result, you know, I say bartenders being bartenders. When we get bored, we get creative.
Yes, you do.
So you start to get more cocktails coming out. And by the 1825s, everybody had their own cocktail list. Everybody had their fancy cocktails. Well, the people being people, they got tired of it. They would resist it. And so they'd come in, they go, you know what? I want to get a cocktail, but I want it made the old-fashioned way. And that's how the old-fashioned got its name. And to this day, the old-fashions have come around in a way that, you know, I probably make as many or more of those than I do anything. Wow. Yeah.
And they loved tell me what an old-fashioned recipe is.
So my old-fashioned recipe, I'm going to take 2 orange moons, and I'm going to peel the rinds, and then I'm going to get 2 cherries. If there's Luxardo cherries, I'll use those. Okay. And then I'll muddle them, and then I healthy squirt of simple syrup. Okay. And then it's going to be 2.5 ounces of whatever bourbon of your choice.
Okay.
And then I'll take it and I'll put it all in the glass. I'll add a dash of bitters to the top, and then I roll it a couple times, and then top it off with ice, and away you go. That's my old fashioned.
Okay. And what do you think is the best bourbon?
You know, that's a good question. I get asked that a lot. The thing that people don't appreciate with bourbon is there's so many.
It is.
And there's so many that you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are bourbons out there that are $1,500 for an ounce.
Yes.
Like, you know, so if you sit down at the bar and you ask me, you know, like Woodford Reserve is a good one. Maker's Mark is a good one. I wouldn't turn anybody away from either one of those two. But you can get to the higher end ones. You know, there's like Blanton's. That's very hard to find. If you can find a bottle of the Blanton's, you know, good for you. Grab it. But even, you know, I'm trying to think of like some of the real high end ones. The one's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it. But there's so many more coming out. You know, so I tell everybody, treat bourbon like wine, where you know you sample a lot of different wines. You enjoy the flavors, you figure out the taste. Do the same thing with bourbon, because there's so much of that out there, and it's such a broad category in the way they make it now that you know you can taste a different bourbon every day of the year and not taste the same one twice.
Would you ever do like a class of tastings of
Oh yeah, sure.
tequila?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
'Cause I mean, you know it.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, no, and I kind of done that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I do like private parties. I've bartended private parties where
Okay.
if people tell me, you
didn't know that.
I want to do this or I want to focus on that. It's
Okay.
whatever, you know. I'll be the bartender for that too, you know. This
I love
actually,
that.
this is what I look like when I show up.
I
so,
love it.
You know.
So-
But yeah, you know, the nice thing about having so much experience in restaurants and bars is I have such a broad experience with so many different alcohols that even if I don't like them or drink them, I can appreciate them and I can guide people. You know.
So this drink was called the Pirates
Pirates Bay.
And what was the ingredients in it again?
So it's Captain Morgan, Malibu, and Blue Carousel.
So do any of them have a story? Captain Morgan, Blue Carousel,
Well, actually,
rum?
it's funny you say that. So there's a pirate from the mid 1600s to the late 1600s. Now, he's a
Okay.
pirate privateer, and the difference was this. Back then, countries didn't have their own navies. So a king needed ships for a war. He would say, you know, you're a ship owner. I'm taking your ship.
Really?
Yeah, and that didn't bode well because you didn't know if you were getting your ship back. You
Yeah.
know? So what they would do is they would issue a letter of marque and make you a privateer. And then as a privateer, you could attack any ship that flew under the enemy's flag, and you could take the ship and all their goods, and you could sell it in one of my ports as the king. So it legalized piracy.
Wow.
These guys.
That's where pirates came from, really.
That's kind of how it starts. And
Wow.
it created, the problem with it is it created a very gray area, because what would happen is the war would end, and I'd say to you, well, I'm going to take your letter of marque, you don't have to be a privateer anymore. And you'd look at me and go, yeah, I got this ship, it's got 40 cannons on it, and I got 400 crewmen who all can fight. I think I'll just stay a pirate. And so you would continue being a pirate. Well, there's constantly wars going on.
Right.
So war would start again 2 years later. I'd call you up and go, yeah, I need a privateer. You can be my privateer now. And I'd issue another letter of marque. And there was a lot of back and forth with that.
Wow.
And so the Royal Navy
Yeah.
was the first navy to come about. And that was, like I said, late 1600s. And there was a captain. His name was Henry Morgan.
Henry Morgan.
He was based in the Caribbean, and he was a privateer, pirate kind of guy. But he always fought with the British. He was always on the British side. He was a hero to Britain because he would raid a lot of the Spanish colonies, take a lot of Spanish ships, and as a result, in Spain, he's considered, you know, the devil incarnate because he was one of the most evil people in their minds.
Oh, my God.
You know, now to this day, he's actually probably the most famous pirate privateer out there because what had happened was in 1946 or 48, the British distillery, and the name's on the tip of my tongue, I'm sorry,
No, you're
Seagram's.
fine.
Seagram's started making a
Oh,
rum. Yeah,
And they make.
they started making a rum,
Okay.
and they named it Captain Morgan. based on
Wow.
Henry Morgan. So while a lot of people don't realize that they're actually carrying on the legacy of Henry
Pirateering.
Morgan and private pirates and privateering, when they drink anything made with Captain Morgan, that
That's
is what
pretty
they're doing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's part of the, there's a lot of history to alcohol. There's a lot of history to all this stuff. And it's kind of fun to learn it all and play it out because nobody knows it,
Yeah.
you know.
That's pretty cool.
I can tell you one other story real
Tell
quick
me,
if we
please.
have time. So, as a bartender, I've been in restaurants for like 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
And something's 80 proof, something's 100 proof.
Where does proof? Yeah, tell me where proof comes from.
So proof comes from this. Back in the day, you didn't go to a liquor store to buy a bottle of whiskey. You went to a farmer's market where there would be a farmer selling it out of a barrel on the back of his cart. So your question would be, how do I know this is really whiskey? And he'd say, I can prove it. And so when you make a batch of whiskey, you're going to cut it with water. And as long as it's around 50% alcohol or more, you can take a pellet of gunpowder and soak it in it, and that gunpowder will still light on fire.
Wow.
So that's what they would do. They'd soak the gunpowder, they'd light it on fire, and they go, there you go, there's your proof. It's 100% whiskey. And so that's where the concept came from. Now, I stumbled across that doing research for the book, and I
Really?
read it, and I'm like, wow, man, that's really cool. And so then I had to incorporate it, and into the book, and kind of, so I play on that a lot during the pages as well. I try to explain it, though, in the second book. So
Yeah, I was just about to ask, with the second book, that's what's next for you? What's going to give me a little sneak peek of what the start story might be.
So this is what I say about them. The first book kind of introduces the characters and sets the context and establishes the moon. The second book is where the story really comes alive.
Okay.
So now you get to know the characters, you kind of get to know the backgrounds a little more. And it kind of starts bringing all those different puzzle pieces together. And you
Yeah.
go, oh, okay, now I get it now. And then the third book, takes us to the end.
Skyrockets. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. The book was such a good book to me, you guys. I wanted to tell you that even though you might not like storytelling books, maybe, I don't know, but this book, again, filled with imagery, filled with good stories, filled with good information, filled with maps, so you're never really lost in the book. And I really enjoyed learning everything that I learned about alcohol.
Well, thank you. I
Like,
appreciate it.
it's informational for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. I
It's
appreciate it.
informational. Do you have a title for the second book?
The second book is going to be called The King's Firkin, and I'm working on that now. Writing a book is a process. That'd be another podcast.
Yeah,
So,
I was just
but
going to ask.
I'm doing maps for
Okay.
this one. Again, I'm trying to make them a little better this time. But as soon as those are done, I have all the writing done, all the editing done. I have people working on that for me. And then it's going to be a matter of getting the cover and getting the maps, getting it all put together, get it to the publisher, and get it out. So if you follow Literary Booze,
Yes.
you'll know when it's coming. Hopefully, and in beginning of next year. That's
Yeah.
kind of the goal. We'll see. I got to depend on other people. So.
Okay, where can they find your book, and tell them again where they can reach you and everything?
You can find the book on Amazon. It's also on the Barnes & Noble website, and it's on Exhibitus, which is the publisher's website.
Okay.
I always say, too, if you come into the bar, I'll be happy to sell you a book then and
Yes.
sign it for you, too.
Yes. You going to sign mine?
I'll sign yours,
Okay.
sure, right now, if you'd like. But then the best way to really follow me is just follow Literary Booze, and you get to learn some authors, and you get to learn a little bit about me, and you also will know what's coming with the book.
And we can visit you at P.F. Chang's, right?
You can visit me at P.F. Chang's. I work at another place, too, in Frankfurt. It's
Yeah.
called La Dolce Vita. It's Italian, so if you like
Okay.
Italian.
I do.
Well, you got to come
I
down
do.
to see
I
me.
will.
We got a brown sugar old-fashioned down there that you have to try, yeah. It's actually better than my recipe. A friend of
Really?
mine came up with it. Oh, yeah, man. She's got a gift. Her name's Liz. She's a
Liz?
bartender down there. And,
Okay.
yeah, you get one of her old-fashions, believe me. Hers blows mine away.
Brown sugar.
Brown sugar old-fashioned.
sounds
yeah.
good.
Yeah, little cocoa bitters in that one.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
That sounds good. Can you please sign my book?
Sure. I'll be happy to.
Thank you. You guys, I absolutely love this book. You guys can check it out at Amazon, at Barnes & Nobles, and at the publisher's website. I will make sure that you can be able to see everything that you need to see and be informed about him because he is super good and super great. And we're going to see what else we can talk about because I really want to talk more about bartending and more alcohol stories if you have some more. For sure.
Sure, I got tons of them.
Okay.
Anytime.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, I'm going to read it right now. You did it in the front, right?
I did it on the title page.
Title page. Ooh. Best part of bartending is the people you meet. Thank you for your support and generosity. It made this possible. Alex Bennett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you spelled my name right.
I did?
Yes.
All right, I wasn't sure.
Oh my gosh.
I was
Thank
so
you.
nervous about that one.
You spell no. Oh my gosh, y'all. People spell it with 2 V's, 1 N, no H. SAVANNAH. You did the right one.
All right,
Thank you
all
so
right.
much. Oh, I'm so excited, you guys. And when do you think the second book might come out?
I'm hoping January. You know, the problem with the process of publishing a book is, you know, you got to wait on, you need help from other people. It's the way it is. And the creative process works at its own pace. So, you know, like I have an artist doing the cover, and I love the cover. He's a great artist, great guy. You can find out about him on my page. And find out where to reach him. But, like, you know, I got to wait for him to get it done. And then I have another artist that helps me with the maps. She does the elements. She does the ships and the, you know, the
image part.
image parts, yes, the elements.
Elements.
And so I have to wait on her to get them to me. And it is what it is. You know, I've learned as a writer, as much as I'd love to sit down and get through 20 pages in a day, sometimes, man, you only get through 2 paragraphs. That's just the way it is.
And what's some advice you can give to some new writers, some new people interested in publishing their own book?
So
'Cause you are published,
yeah, well,
which is a very big accomplishment for
you
sure.
got to get there. You know, the first thing I tell everybody, the first rule comes from Hemingway, and he says the first draft of anything is crap. You just want to get it down. So don't try to write the bestseller, and when you sit down, just get your draft down. Get your thoughts on paper. You know, you give yourself something to work with. You can use the same word a million times, and it doesn't matter. You know, later on, you clean all that sort of stuff up. But once you get that first draft down, you know, that's what's important. The second piece of advice I give everybody is write what you know. You know, so no, I don't know about sailing ships, and I don't know about the 1700s or whatever, but I did the research for it. And I also know a lot about bars. And as you point out, you spend a lot of time in a bar.
Yes,
and,
you do.
You know, I kind of know the way people interact and stuff like that. So, but if I would advise you, you know, you're involved in radio, you're involved in podcasting, you got stories from that.
Yeah, you do.
Sit down and write those stories. Your favorite guest, or you know, what inspired you to get there, how you got there. You know, and do short stories. Don't try to write you know. I say you don't run a marathon until you run a mile. So don't try to write a book. Write a short story, 3-5 pages. Get yourself some confidence that way. You know, and then the last thing I tell everybody is you got to treat it like a job. So like, you know, you came in on a Friday. On Friday, when I don't work on Friday nights, I get home from work, man, and I sit in front of my computer. And again, I don't care if I don't write, if I write 20 pages, if I write 2 pages, I'm going to be in front of my computer for 4 or 5 hours because I got to treat it like a job. That's when I work, you know. Same thing on Thursdays. I close on Thursdays. So Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, I'm in front of my computer. And I might struggle, and I might not. But from 10 to 3, I'm going to be in front of that computer, and I'm going to work at it.
I agree. Robert Greene wrote a book called Mastery.
Okay.
It's a little newer, but I absolutely love it. And in the book, he does talk about spending enough. There is a such thing as becoming a master. You spend so many thousands of hours becoming the master of what you do, but the time that you put in, and if you really do treat it as if it's your corporate work job, you become exactly what you want to become. You do exactly what you end up wanting to do, and it flourishes.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
It's like everything else.
And a good habit at that.
And I find myself, if I want to skip one of my days writing, I can't do that. Like, it's on me, you know. I feel like
you think about it too
I'm
much.
not being productive or something, you know. And but it's easy to say, well, I don't feel it today, I'll get it to tomorrow, or, you know, I'll go do that. That's more fun. Well, you know, if you want to write a book, you're never going to get to the end of it if you take that approach.
And what's some advice that you have for new bartenders or anybody who wants to get into becoming a seasoned bartender like yourself?
Well, I tell everybody, start at a shot in a beer place. You know, learn to be behind a bar, learn to
Yes.
interact with people. Bartending is all 90% holding conversations, getting to know people, building your business that way. You know, you learn how to make drinks like this as you go. You learn the flavors of different alcohols as you go. But you know, you gotta first learn how to pick up a bottle, how to pour a shot. You know, one of the things, if you watch me, I free pour. So,
You do.
Yeah, but that
You
takes.
don't need the measuring tools.
No, you know, but there's a trick to that, and
Yeah.
you count, and so for every quarter ounce, it's a count. So
That's a
if you
count.
think, you know, the best way for me to relate to it, a lot of people get it when I say there's 4 quarters in an ounce, right?
Yes.
So you know, you count to 4, and that's an ounce. A standard shot
Okay.
is going to be an ounce and a half, you know, and you just practice that, you know, and then you get that down, and then it becomes easier to make the drinks faster. But you know, it's more about going in somewhere where it's a lot of regulars, a lot of shot and beer, a lot of, you know, not complicated, and just learning kind of the environment and the context. And you know, that's always my advice to young bartenders.
Okay.
You know?
And is the 3-finger rule real?
Well-
I used to be a server, you guys, and one time I had a guy come in, and he was like, I want Jameson. And I said, okay, how much do you want? He was like, it better be 3 fingers. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
how much
well-
is that? I don't know what that is.
So the 3-finger idea is you put it 3 fingers at the bottom of the glass.
Okay.
And then you pour it to that amount. Now, the idea behind it is an ounce a finger. So it would be 3 ounces of whatever alcohol, Jameson's.
Is that accurate?
You want it. You know, it depends on how your bigger fingers are, how big your fingers are to how big my fingers are, you know. It goes back to the old days, though, like, and I kind of do that in the second book a little bit, where that's how one of the characters measures out his drinks, you know, because it definitely, whether it's accurate or not, it's definitely part of the history.
It is.
So,
It
you know,
definitely
yeah, people refer to that as, you know, give me 3 fingers. They want a lot.
Yeah.
2 fingers would be a standard sort of drink, I would say.
So since you're doing 3 books for this, are you planning on another series of some sort, another book after this Chronicles?
Tons of ideas up
Yeah.
here. You know, most of them will be based around restaurants. You know,
Okay.
I got a lot of stories, you know. Be much easier because there's not the research, you know. But I do have I got enough to keep me busy for a while. Now,
Yeah, that's
when I
good.
get through those, I don't know, we'll see what happens then. But,
Okay.
you know, the nice thing about working in restaurants, there's a new story every day,
It is a new
you
story.
know, and there's a new character every day. And that's what I tell everybody too, which you should probably be careful. If you sit at my bar, you might end up in a book. You know, a lot of these
You might.
characters are straight from my life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
So
that. It makes it personal.
makes it very
to you,
personal.
and
Yeah.
it makes you really want it to be what
Bring
you
them alive.
bring them alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's one, Rags is the old cantankerous, you know, person in the first book, and he was my first regular. I mean, and Rags is Rags, Rags is Rags, and he taught me a lot. He was a World War II vet.
Okay.
He was stationed at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, and so now he was in the Army, he wasn't in the Navy, but he was there for it.
He was there.
And he fought the Japanese all the way up to Japan, and
Wow.
had a lot of stories about that, a lot of interesting insights into life. Made him kind of bitter, I guess I'd say,
Yeah.
but he was, you know, he had a good heart in that if he liked you, man, he'd, you know,
He'd
shirt
tell
off the
you.
back kind of person. And he really liked me, and, you know, he told me a lot of stories, taught me a lot, and so I put him, he died probably about 10 years ago now. So, but he was going to be part of the book, you know, I had to put him in the book, so.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I really do want to emphasize like the older generation and people with the much more, I don't want to say historic stories, but because we are living in a historic time, even in 2023, 2024, 2025. But I really want people to learn to appreciate it because you never know. That's your history book right there. That teaches
Very
you
much so.
everything because they were really there.
They were there.
It's nothing like hearing an old war story from a soldier who fought for our country and did what they needed to do, rather than hearing it on NBC or Fox News or anything like that.
30-second soundbite doesn't do you any good, and it just gives you an image, but you don't get the texture, you don't get the feel,
You
don't know
don't.
what it smells like, you don't know what it sounded like, you don't feel the fear of somebody who, one of the stories he always told me in Rags, never saw him get scared once, never once. And he had said to me, the only time in my life that I was ever scared was when it was nighttime, the Japanese came over and bombed. And he's like, we had no idea what was coming. There was no radar back then or nothing. He's like, all of a sudden, there's 500-pound bombs dropping around us. I jumped under my cot. Not that was going to do a lot of good.
Oh my God.
But he's like, I'm just sitting there praying to God that no one's not going to hit me.
Yeah.
And, and he said, Al, that was the most scared I'd ever been in my life. And after going through that, there's nothing else that's going to scare him.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it.
That's it.
That's
It's
it.
about as scary
He
as
almost
it's gonna
stared
get.
death in the face.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he gave me goosebumps when he's telling me that story too.
And you're not going to get that from a reporter.
No, exactly.
You're not.
Exactly. So,
Wow.
again, that goes back to my favorite part of bartending. Get to meet interesting people.
Yeah.
Get to make connections, get relationships. It's
What's your least favorite part? We do have to discuss that.
fair enough. So the least favorite part, the number one that everybody's going to say is when you get stiffed. And yeah, we make tips, and so it's always painful when somebody doesn't
Tip your servers. Tip your bartenders.
But
20%.
Yeah, 20% is good, man. I like your numbers.
20%.
The hardest part, though, is when you got to cut somebody off. Nobody likes doing that. You suddenly find yourself having to take responsibility for another person. You know? And as
That's
bartenders
scary.
and servers, we can get in a lot of trouble if somebody goes out and we overserve them and they kill somebody or kill themselves or anything. And the way I handle it is I've learned to say, look, I can't serve you again. I don't want nothing bad to happen to you. I don't want nothing bad to happen to me. God forbid you get a DUI or a DUI now is going to change your life for the negative for years.
Because it really doesn't go away.
Yeah, it doesn't. And so that's why I try to tell everybody. But that's the worst part of it, without a doubt.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Especially them leaving.
Yeah.
You don't know what happens.
You don't know where they're going. You don't know, what could happen if they're driving, what kind of driver they are, And so that's always a little scary.
That is. That definitely is. But you guys make sure you tip your servers.
Yeah.
Tip your bartenders.
That's how they survive, believe me.
Yes. So you guys, we are going to do a Mad Libs story since you are an author.
Okay.
If you guys don't know what Mad Libs are, Mad Libs used to be, I don't know if they still make them, but it used to be like a little pamphlet of stories you can write, like mismatched words and make it like a goofy little story that you could tell to your friends and on road trips and stuff like that. So I gave you a card and I gave you a pen.
Okay.
You can use, if you want to use the book for like some, like a level or something, you can. So these are the words I picked. It's going to be snowy, cake, beer, Navy pier, and secrets. So you can make a little short story super quick. Doesn't have to be long or anything, but something cool.
All right, I'm trying to think.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a snowy December, and I was down at Navy Pier. I was having a beer, and there was an old timer there. It's next to me, and so we start chatting a little bit, and he starts telling me that, one of his favorite times of life was he was riding a Harley, and he went across the U.S. on the back of a Harley. And I was like, well, what was the best part of it? He's like, it's hard to tell you what the best part was, but I'll tell you this. It was my birthday. We'd stopped in a diner. We were in Wyoming.
Wow.
Stop in a diner, get a piece of cake, celebrate a little bit. And then we take off and we're on a road, and there's nothing else on this road. And as I'm driving, I'm looking around. All I hear is the wind and my Harley below me and the rumble of the pipes. I can feel the vibrations. And you look ahead, and it's just all vast landscape. landscape, you know. And all of a sudden, off to my left, I see a couple does, you know, deer, and something suddenly spooks them. And as I turn and look over my shoulder, all of a sudden there's a buck, 12-point buck, just flying down the side of the road. And as he's running, you know, he's actually running faster than me because it's like mating season. He's going after him. And I thought to myself, that was so cool. Like, I wish I could see that more often. And he said, you know, I suppose I could tell you some of my other stories, but those should probably remain a secret. However, if you're heading across the nation and you ever think that you're, you know, by yourself and all alone, if you turn and look and you see that a buck chasing some does, then you should know I'm riding right next to you.
Wow. That's good.
Oh, thanks.
That's good. You guys, this is Alex Bennett. You have been on Sav's Social Circle, a.k.a. S3 Podcast, with your girl, Savannah Justine, as your host. I want to thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
It's humbling to have you ask me.
No problem. I'm so glad you came. And you guys, stay tuned for next time. Have a good one, okay? Be safe.